What if a single piece of evidence could have completely changed the outcome of Conor McGregor's case? This question has been on my mind ever since I received feedback from viewers on my last video. Some of you pointed out crucial details I overlooked, details that could be game changers in understanding both McGregor's defense and the prosecution's approach. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most significant missing elements, the exclusion of key witness statements. We'll explore why this matters, how it may have impacted McGregor's trial, and what it means for his potential appeal. Let us start by revisiting an important claim made by McGregor himself. Throughout the legal battle, McGregor expressed frustration with the way the case was handled. One of his primary grievances was that the jury never got to hear all the evidence reviewed by the Director of Public Prosecutions (DPP). In my initial breakdown, I covered several possible reasons why the DPP ultimately decided not to move forward with the case, but I missed a crucial point: the role of witness statements from hotel staff and a taxi driver. Could it be that McGregor believed one of these statements was unfairly excluded from the trial? A dramatic courtroom moment adds weight to this theory. During McGregor's cross-examination by Nikita H.'s legal team, he suddenly jumped out of his seat and threw his phone across the room, saying, "Here, you can have it, pal." This outburst, highlighted on an Irish crime podcast, showcased his frustration and impulsivity, something that does not play well in a courtroom setting. Unlike a UFC press conference, where such behavior can be seen as part of the show, erratic actions in court can damage credibility in the eyes of the jury. But what exactly triggered McGregor's explosive reaction? He was shouting about wanting all the evidence to be presented, specifically referencing a statement from a taxi driver. According to McGregor, the driver had witnessed Nikita performing oral sex on someone in the back seat. While McGregor didn't explicitly name anyone, we do know that Nikita left in a taxi with James Lawrence. This heavily implies that McGregor was suggesting Lawrence was the other individual involved in the alleged incident. Yet, despite this, the jury was never allowed to consider the taxi driver's statement in court. Why now? I know some might argue that McGregor was just throwing out accusations in a desperate attempt to sway the jury. But here's the thing: this isn't just coming from McGregor. We know from the DPP's records that a taxi driver did, in fact, make a statement, and the prosecution considered it relevant to the case. Yet, for reasons that remain unclear, it never made its way into the courtroom. This raises a critical question: was McGregor denied a fair trial? Some might argue that if the judge excluded the taxi driver's testimony, there must have been a valid legal reason for doing so. But here's where things get even more complicated. If McGregor had been the sole defendant, one could potentially argue that the statement was irrelevant or even prejudicial. However, James Lawrence was also a co-defendant, accused of engaging in non-consensual sex with Nikita. A witness statement describing a consensual act between them could have been a crucial element in his defense. In turn, this could have also strengthened McGregor's case. To fully grasp the impact of this, let us revisit how the jury reached their verdict. Many people assumed that James Lawrence was found not liable because the jury believed him over Nikita. But that's not what actually happened. The reality is far more complex. James Lawrence only became a co-defendant after Nikita accused McGregor of sexual assault. When questioned, James admitted to having sex with Nikita, a claim she did not initially recall. However, upon hearing James' account, Nikita insisted that if the encounter had occurred, it had not been consensual. This led to James being accused of sexual assault as well. Throughout the trial, Nikita maintained that James' story was nothing more than an attempt to support McGregor and discredit her. In the end, the jury ruled in favor of Nikita's version of events. They concluded that James and Nikita had not engaged in any sexual activity at all, which is why he was found not liable. However, this verdict also meant that his testimony did little to help McGregor's defense, The judge later reinforced this conclusion by declining to order Nikita to cover James' legal fees, further supporting the notion that the jury had dismissed his claims. So, why is the taxi driver's testimony so important? Had the jury been presented with a credible witness stating that Nikita and James did engage in a consensual act that night, it would have been much harder for them to conclude that nothing happened between them at all. This could have changed the entire narrative of the case and may have bolstered McGregor's defense significantly. If McGregor's claim about the taxi driver's statement is accurate, it raises serious concerns about why this testimony was blocked. However, before we jump to conclusions, let us address an important reality. Many people misunderstand how the Irish judicial system operates. Contrary to popular belief, it is not some archaic institution ruled by tradition and personal bias. Yes, the wigs and formalities may give off that impression, but Ireland's judiciary is bound by strict legal standards. Judges are not free to make arbitrary decisions without justification. Any ruling, especially one as significant as excluding key testimony, must align with established legal principles. This means that the judge overseeing McGregor's case did not simply exclude the taxi driver's statement on a whim. If the exclusion had been unjustified, McGregor's legal team would have had every opportunity and the financial resources to challenge it. And let us not forget, this case is the highest profile trial this judge will likely face in his entire career. If McGregor's appeal were to succeed due to procedural errors, it would be an enormous embarrassment for both the judge and the entire judicial system. Given these stakes, it is safe to assume that the judge's decision was made in accordance with legal guidelines, even if it remains puzzling. One final mystery remains: if the taxi driver's statement referred to James Lawrence, why didn't James himself bring it up in his defense? This seems like a glaring omission. One possible explanation is that the driver was actually referring to someone else, perhaps even himself. But this theory has its own complications, making the situation even murkier. Looking ahead, the taxi driver's testimony could play a pivotal role in McGregor's appeal. However, it's important to remember that appeals are not granted simply because someone dislikes the verdict. This isn't a UFC rematch where you can call for a redo. McGregor's team will need to present a solid legal argument proving that critical evidence was wrongfully excluded. If the exclusion of the taxi driver's statement becomes the cornerstone of McGregor's appeal, the court will have to scrutinize the judge's decision-making process. At the end of the day, McGregor's frustrations may be justified, but the legal system operates within a strict framework. Whether or not the taxi driver's testimony would have swayed the jury remains an open question. However, one thing is certain: this missing piece of evidence has left lingering doubts about the fairness of the trial. As we await further developments, this case serves as a powerful reminder of how a single excluded statement can shape the course of a legal battle. So, what do you think? Was McGregor's trial handled fairly, or does this missing testimony raise serious concerns? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As Conor McGregor faces scrutiny during the appeals process, public reaction to the trial has been intense. Many supporters of McGregor struggle to comprehend how a jury could side with someone whose account contained multiple inconsistencies. Regardless of personal opinions, it is crucial to examine the reliability of Nikita's testimony and the factors that influenced the jury's decision. A key point raised by critics is Nikita's credibility, particularly her history of dishonesty with her boyfriend. While lying to a partner may call aspects of her character into question, the larger issue lies in her ability to provide a truthful and consistent recounting of events. When trying to present a coherent account, she frequently failed to do so. This was not just about minor memory lapses such as forgetting the precise location of a text message, but about fabricating dramatic and verifiably false scenarios. For example, Nikita claimed she escaped from the hotel, fearing McGregor's security, and ran from the car park to hail a taxi, a sequence of events resembling an action movie. However, evidence showed that she calmly left the hotel in a taxi alongside James Lawrence. This directly contradicted her initial assertion of a frantic escape. What is striking is that Nikita may have genuinely believed her story at the time. Her distress appeared to impact her perception of reality, leading to contradictory accounts presented to her manager, her boyfriend, and law enforcement. She repeatedly forgot crucial details, altered her statements, and introduced fictitious elements. These inconsistencies are not merely personal attacks but verifiable contradictions, which have left many questioning the jury's verdict. McGregor's supporters argue that the trial outcome reflects bias against him or possibly a larger conspiracy. However, to understand the verdict, it is important to recognize the fundamental differences between civil and criminal trials. In a criminal case, the standard of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt, whereas civil cases operate on a lower threshold, the balance of probabilities. This means the jury's task was not to be absolutely certain of McGregor's guilt but rather to determine which version of events seemed more probable. The most significant aspect of the case revolved around the nature and cause of Nikita's injuries. Various theories have been proposed, ranging from an accident, as McGregor claimed, suggesting she fell into a bathtub, to rough sex, a series of smaller incidents, or an intentional assault. Two medical experts testified that Nikita's injuries aligned with the type seen in sexual assault cases. To put this into perspective, let us examine the documented injuries: an abrasion on the right side of her jaw, a deep bruise on her neck resembling a love bite, bruising on her right arm consistent with fingertip pressure, as well as bruises on her forearm and lower arm. On her left arm, there were additional abrasions and scratches, including marks on her elbow. Her shoulder and upper back also bore bruising, with extensive bruising on her buttocks, some appearing to resemble handprints. Bruising and a scratch on her breasts, additional marks on her thighs, bruising on her knees, and the loss of 4 acrylic nails further added to the severity of her condition. Given this list, it is understandable why medical professionals concluded the injuries were more likely a result of an assault than an accident. Patterns such as fingertip bruising and hand-shaped marks typically indicate deliberate force rather than accidental harm. However, the jury's real challenge was determining who inflicted these injuries and when they occurred. One of the strongest defenses for McGregor would have been proving that Nikita had these injuries prior to their encounter. However, McGregor himself expressed shock when presented with the photos, denying he noticed any injuries at the time. Had the injuries predated their interaction, this would have been a focal point of his defense. The timeline of events further complicates matters. After leaving the taxi with James Lawrence, Nikita did not immediately return home. Instead, she went to her manager, Emmer Brennan, who testified that Nikita appeared distressed and named McGregor as her attacker. Brennan also claimed to have seen and photographed Nikita's injuries, though she later deleted the images due to concerns over media exposure. From there, Nikita returned home, where her boyfriend recorded a 38-minute conversation. During this discussion, the two talked about the injuries. The boyfriend expressed sympathy, urged her to report the incident, and even offered to take time off work to support her. Nikita, however, hesitated, resisting the idea of involving the police. This recording provides one of the earliest verifiable accounts of her injuries, suggesting they occurred sometime between leaving James Lawrence and meeting Brennan. If the jury believed Brennan's testimony, it placed the injuries squarely after Nikita's departure from Lawrence, which posed a significant issue for McGregor's defense. The case then likely came down to two key questions: were Nikita's injuries more consistent with an assault than an accident or rough sex given the time frame? Who was the most probable cause of the injuries, McGregor or someone else? Since civil trials only require a ruling based on what is more likely rather than absolute certainty, the jury determined McGregor was the more probable source of the injuries. To clarify, this discussion is not about advocating for one side over the other. Some may feel that exploring the taxi driver's testimony indicates support for McGregor, while others may view the detailed breakdown of Nikita's injuries as siding with her. However, this analysis is not about taking sides but rather about examining the potential reasoning behind the jury's verdict. It is impossible to personally assess the credibility of the evidence, the witnesses, or the testimony. For instance, the details surrounding the taxi driver's statement, why it was not admitted, or the reliability of Brennan's account remain unknown. Similarly, while the boyfriend's recording provides context, its full impact on the case cannot be determined without deeper legal scrutiny. The role of a trial is to allow a jury to thoroughly examine all available evidence and evaluate its credibility. This article simply aims to explore how these factors may have shaped the jury's perspective, rather than drawing definitive conclusions on the guilt or innocence of either party. Ultimately, the McGregor trial demonstrates the complexities of civil litigation, the challenge of establishing credibility, and the nuances involved in evaluating evidence. Public opinion may remain divided, but the legal process operates on its own terms whether one agrees with the outcome or not.